everyone, what's up? This is Dave Neven, giving you guys a little run through of my next release on Cold Harbor, titled Traveling. This is the first release under my brand new Ocata alias, which is my darker progressive trance side. This was the track that was featured on In Search of Sunrise 14 that Marcus Schultz used in his segment. So I'm going to give you guys a little run through of how I made this track. Not necessarily a tutorial, but I will show you a little bit about how I created this and what went into it. So getting right into it, starting off, this is the track. It is a lot cleaned up since I originally made it. This is not what it usually looks like because I work pretty messy, but when it comes to doing bounce down for stems and all that, this is traditionally how it should look. It should be clean and easy for you to know what stems that you're bouncing and whatnot. So starting off at the top here, I have actually two sidechain kick channels, two ghost channels. Reason for that is during the breakdown here, I wanted a sidechain on certain instruments, some movements that doesn't necessarily happen as much during when the kick drum is playing and all the beats and all the instruments and all that other stuff. So I mean, you can do it a couple of different ways with LFO tool or whatever, but for me, this way works really well. I can control it a little better personally. So next one here is the kick group. So the first one is pretty much the main kick, and this one is rounded off a little bit at the top. I didn't want any of those higher frequencies playing. I got an SSLG compressor on it as well. It gives it that nice punch. I don't always use that. It just depends. And for this specific case, it worked really well. And then I got an auto filter for at the intro and maybe certain other spots that I want some of the low end to be rounded off. And then it'll come in, for example, there. So the auto filter turns off. And wanted this kick drum in mono because I also have a top kick. So the top kick is pretty much going to be that frequency that I cut out from the main kick. It's going to be that little click at the top. In this case, it sounds almost like a hi-hat. Little compressor to tighten it up, and together they sound like that. So the next group is a drum group. This is probably going to be a bunch of just different percussions and stuff that I did. Let's see. Yep. So a lot of times I'll just be going through some of my sample packs and I'll find different sounds that I like. And I'll start plugging them into a drum rack. Make sure that they're all in key, obviously. If not, transpose them to whatever key you're in. And then I just start creating a pattern or something that sounds interesting to me, some different velocity changes and whatnot, and then each one normally has its own group of own set of EQing, filtering, effects, whatever the case is, and then in this case just an EQ on the main drum rack group itself. This is just a spectrum so I can see what frequencies I was using when I was playing these instruments. And each one has its own little effect or whatever. Right. Next one is another drum group. So it's probably about the same thing, just different sounds. I'm sorry. There we go. Yeah, this one has some other claps, some cymbals. And again, each one has its own set of effects going on. For example, this one has a little bit of auto panning. So every time that knock hits, it kind of moves around your spectrum or your ears. Claps, rides, little closed hi-hat, open, just random sounds that go into this. Right. And this is pretty much the automation per sample for whatever I'm doing. For in this case, it's going to be automating the EQ on this sound. So as you can tell, Slowly cutting off somewhere in here. There it is. Slowly cutting off the highs there. So it just slowly goes up. Right. Next is just a snare fill that we have here. Looks like sounds like a little bit of reverb on there from the send. Also some compressors, EQ, and a little limiter on it as well. Make it nice and tight. Has that nice tail on it as well, as you can hear. Next is vocal effects. So vocal effects, I love doing these in a lot of my songs. This is like just random samples that I find, or even if I do it in synths, render it out, bring it in as audio, save a lot of CPU on that. But these are just gonna be random vocal atmospheres that fit in the key of my track. So together, got a lot of movement going on. Some of them are panning left to right. Fills out a really nice area, I think, in the mix. Your ride. So, but in this case, it's not a traditional ride. This is more of like an FX atmosphere in the background. Gives it some movement as well. So I got a transient shaper on here. It takes out all the attack from it. Ping pong delay to give it movement from side to side. Bunch of reverb. Hell of a lot of reverb. And then some compression. EQ to cut out the frequencies that I don't want. So I just want this little nice area floating around in the mix. And then to finish it off with your side chain to give it that bounce with the kick drum. Next is just some hi-hats here. So I have two different open hi-hats here. One pan to the left, one pan to the right. And it's also delayed a little bit as well. Personally, I feel like with these style tracks, it's very, very important to find the right hi-hat. Because as you can tell, if I play this all together, you can really, really tell that hi-hat that bites through your mix, especially when you layer them like that and you separate them a little bit with pan and delay. Delay, I mean placement. So almost like grooves, so it doesn't necessarily hit on the exact same, right? So playing it all together. Right? And if I take away this hi-hat now, it's back on, you can tell the big difference of that hi-hat cutting through your mix. Next is a clap that I added. This one is just simply EQ'd and cutting out all the highs, so it's a nice little clap to add in the background. And I got it panned to the left a little bit because I had those other claps in one of these drum groups. FX. These are random knocks and everything that I usually do a lot of knocks and reverb stuff and effects in a lot of my songs. Stuff like this. Right. This one is actually used with Silent, and the pattern changes a little bit. It starts pretty basic, and then it turns into a nice little groovier one with a change. And that's hitting a chord. And then pluck loop. So this is just a cool pluck loop that I found that adds a nice touch. Alright, so all together, let's see, I'll add very subtle, but you can slightly hear that in the background, which creates a nice atmosphere for the song. Follow knock. So this knock actually, as I was creating the song, a lot of times you'll just randomly have those ideas. This was one of them. It's just a random knock, but I remember as I was making this, the pluck group, there's a specific spot in this pluck group that I felt like it would be cool to have a knock come in and out of the song. So if I play them together here, you can actually hear it together. So you can hear how that knock fits really nice with that specific time the pluck hits, right? I'll get into plucks in a minute here. So top line, this is the pluck top line. It's got a very simple melody. Just up, down, with a little bit of change in there. And then it does change in here during the break as well. Kind of comes up a little bit more. And that is from Spire. It's got a little change in the oscillator pitch, which gives it that little cool, interesting sound to it. Pads here. So all together. Starting off with this first one, it's a single. It's pretty much a mid layer. If you look here, it's EQ'd pretty much in the middle. It's got some automation on the filter cutoff. You see the EQ moving as well. It's kind of coming up a little bit. Second one, it's more of the low, but I do have some area cut out here because to me, that's a very muddy area for that string. This one I made it in a omnisphere, and for me that just eats up a lot of CPUs, so I actually rendered it out. This is a nice string orchestra pad that I really liked. It's got some auto panning over here, some movement on this EQ, on the low cut and high cut. Also, you can use filters for that, depending on your taste. Not much going on, but it's just when that drop comes. Get a little glitchy here because I am running the recorder right now. Not sure. Right, and there's a low pad as well, which again has a little bit of movement here. Just rounding off that low end and some reverb. And that's only playing during the breakdown, so I didn't necessarily need any sidechain on that or anything, unless you want a little bit of movement to it. That's when I would have sidechained it to my Sidekick 2. Next, the plucks. This was a pretty interesting pattern that I did. It's pretty much just an arpeggiator. And then it has those changes for when the bass changes. There is the main one. As you guys heard. There's a nice delay one, which is just playing in that mid-frequency area. And it looks like I have an automation on the delay wet as well. And then another fill, and I believe, let's see if that, yeah, so this one hits at the same time that knock hits. So if you guys can tell. Right? Sounds really good together. If I remember right, during the breakdown, this is what comes in. Hear it? Kind of separates. Right. Next, I have a brass here. Playing a simple pattern. Top bass. This is actually following the same pattern as the plugs. This one. And then there's certain parts where the ARP of the bass drops out and it just leaves that bottom one. Right. And then I actually duplicated that track because I wanted the ARP of the bass, of the top bass, to separate from that bottom part. So if you could hear here, this part will actually come in, but you can still tell this is only playing the high frequencies. The EQ here is coming out. And this is playing all low. So it separates the two. Right? Does the same thing over here, it just separates. Same concept. And then the bass, this is a low bass, so mid-low. So the first one is actually just a sample. Just a nice round, almost sine style bass stab. Next is Silent, playing a different pattern. And then the sub. So those three together with the kick drum. It's really got a nice groove, nice movement to it. And then actually there's a drone bass as well that goes in that as well. Just playing a very small frequency. And this is the break bass, which is pretty much similar to the drone, but not as movement. And the last group is all the effects, just the random sweeps, crashes, white noise, risers. Alright, whole lot of reverbs going on, and on the sends here I have a Valhalla reverb, some EQ, and then compressor on the reverb itself, and a simple delay. And on the master, as I'm working, usually be turning these off and on depending on how I want to hear the mix. But a multi-band and the limiter. And there you have it. So that is a run through of my track Traveling, coming out October 8th on Cold Harbor Recordings. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little run through. Be sure to check it out if you haven't heard the full version, and I hope you guys support it on October 8th.